we spend a lot of time talking about security, looking at security. It's where it used to be an afterthought or no thought at all. It's now the first in every thought you have on anything. First thought you have in the morning, and any new initiative we start talking about, it's okay, how does this affect security? And if it's going to create a hole in our security, you can't do it.
All right, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the All Innovation, the AI podcast. Now, me and Dante are bringing you an amazing guest today because we're going to be talking about innovation. As you guys know what we do here on the podcast, but beyond that, we're going to talk about Jeff's story. So today we're bringing you the CEO and co-founder of Andromeda Technologies. Jeff, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Kenan. Glad to be here. Excited.
You know, when people think about innovation, technology, right, the spaces that you play in, often we think the best way to build a business is to go out to a VC, go to Silicon Valley and raise hundreds of millions of dollars to make our dream come true. But you took a different approach by taking long lunches, working on the weekends, and gathering some of your team members to take the slow road. Why was that so important for you, man? Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe we're ahead of our time or behind our time, I don't know. But, this was 30 years ago. So it was back before people just, dropped out of college and quit their jobs and did all that. So, it was the only way we thought to do it. We had some of my guys had families, and we weren't really in a position to just kind of cut and run. So, so we just started real slow. Plus, we probably, back in our minds, we thought this is never going to work. So we better hang on to the day job. It was just a nice, safe way, I guess, to do it. And in the long run, I think it worked out well. It gave us a lot of runway to just sort of learn what we were doing and get things in order. And, it's a different world these days, but it was the way we chose to do it, and it worked out pretty well.
Can you tell us a little bit about the previous state that you were in? What type of work were you doing? What type of business were you guys participating in? Who are the people you talked to in the early days about starting your own thing? And what were some of those conversations like?
Yeah, so the three founding partners, we all worked at a place, it was a very high-tech company right here in Lockport, Illinois, where no high-tech company should ever be. The founders of that company came out of like a couple national labs, Argonne National Lab, Fermi National Lab. So they were, but it was a very, we did a lot of interfacing with engine test stands for automotive companies or jet engine testing. So it was very high-tech. So I was a software engineer. I wrote software. One of my other partners was a software guy, and then the third guy was a hardware guy. And man, it was so long ago. We worked hard at this place. We would work 50, 60, 70 hours sometimes. And it was always a great place to work, but they were always struggling. So one day, one of us, and there's always a discussion on whose idea it was, said, if we're going to work this hard, we should do it on our own. And I don't think we even talked to many people about it. We just sort of went to dinner one night and we all said, yeah, let's go do this. And then we were off to the races. So I don't think we had a lot of in-depth conversation other than let's go. And then, figure it out from there.
What did those early days look like as far as bringing on your first customer? So much has evolved as far as marketing, sales, over the last 30 years. So what was the process of getting like your first, 1 to 5 customers like?
Oh, it's a sad, sad story. So our first marketing effort, and we've never been very good at marketing since day one. So we made up some flyers and we split up into 2 teams, and we stood outside of Best Buys and handed out these flyers to people walking into Best Buy. And then one of my partners got really bold, and he went up and he started hanging up flyers inside of Best Buy. And you could imagine how they reacted to that. But that did get us our very first paying customer. He got a flyer from Best Buy and called us up, and we affectionately call him Trailer Park Bill because his name was Bill and he lived in a trailer park. And he bought a new computer, and he needed it swapped from the old one. So one of my partners and I went out during lunch, drove out to this trailer park, did his swap, and then and I remember this distinctly, we were there for probably 2-3 hours, but my partner had to get back for like a board meeting. So it was a really important board meeting, and he cut it by the skin of his teeth. We didn't get to eat lunch, but that was our very first customer. And then we picked up a few more through some other little marketing efforts, but that was one customer from the Best Buy, and that got us going.
What was the journey like after that? So we hang out with Trailer Park Bill, right? Trailer Park Bill was his name, right? We engage with this person, and we help him swap his computer over. We go back to work, right? And now we're saying, okay, we really have something here. So was it trying to attract more Trailer Park Bills, or was it, hey, we can provide services to different organizations? What was that kind of process like?
Yeah. So then, we undertook okay, you have to have a business plan. So we drove to the store because again, 30 years ago, when you needed some software to help you build a business plan, you had to drive to the store and get a box of software and load it up. And I wish we still had the plan. It's somewhere along the ways it got lost. But our original business plan was we thought 80-90% of our business would come from home users and a little bit from business. Trailer Bark Bill was our one and only home user ever, and it's been all business since then. So, the business plan probably didn't help much, but really, yes, some of that early marketing, we went and grabbed a local chamber book and all their members and did some mailings to the members and did some calling. So it was just that boots on the ground, bootstrapping marketing. And from that, we got a couple customers, another business somebody knew, and we got in that way. So and then you get a little momentum going. And then was really probably after we got those first couple of business customers, we said, okay, maybe we could do something here.
Jeff, as I hear you speak, I just hear a lot of grit, tenacity, a lot of fortitude during this journey, especially in the early days. How do you feel like you've taken that mindset, being scrappy, still very young company, and how do you feel like you've taken that mindset into the days of today, 30 years later?
Yeah, that's been one of our founding. Matter of fact, it's one of our. You can't see it hanging behind me, but our core values. One of our core values for the company is grit. Especially in IT, if you can't have the fortitude to stick something out, because sometimes you try to fix something and it doesn't work and you try again, and sometimes it's 3 or 4 times. So this is a value that we really instill in the company is you got to really be able to stick something out. And I think both in IT and both as a business owner, especially a young business, there's going to be days where things don't go well, and there's going to be a day where a customer of yours owes you money and goes out of business. There's just all kinds of hurdles that get thrown at you, and you got to be able to have the fortitude and that staying power, I think, to overcome those and to be able to rise above, so to speak. So it's definitely been one of the foundational things that I think has helped us succeed in these 30 years.
Did you ever have team members who didn't have that natural grit to kind of overcome those challenging times, the dry times, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. Especially being an IT managed service provider. So we'll get a lot of, not a lot, we've gotten pretty good at weeding these out, but a guy who's an IT guy, who's a great IT guy at a school district, let's say, and they're used to one network. They know everything top to bottom. And then they come here and it's 100 different clients networks and 100 different clients that you have to interface with. And it is a complete and utter mind shift for them. Um, and again, either have it or you don't is what we've kind of found. And some people either can make the transition, but most can't. So now we've really focused on hiring people that are familiar with the space because it's not all IT is not created equal. But again, some people do have the grit to get through it and learn how to basically take their IT skills and apply them to a little bit of a different industry for that.
In our previous conversation, you talked a little bit about how the industry has evolved over 30 years, obviously. But one of the things you said was, being a managed service provider has become increasingly challenging because you have a lot of people pointing arrows at your back. How have you evolved and transformed during this process as well?
Yeah, we always say so many things have stayed the same and so many things have changed, right? At the foundation level, you're still taking care of clients. And as much as over the years, everyone says technology is going to change everything and make it better and just work. And that's just never the case. But yeah, as a business, like you said, there's just a big giant target on our back because basically, if somebody can get access to our infrastructure, they can get into hundreds of clients. So we spend a lot of time talking about security, looking at security. It's where it used to be an afterthought or no thought at all. It's now the first and every thought you have on anything. First thought you have in the morning, and any new initiative we start talking about, it's okay. How does this affect security? And if it's going to create a hole in our security, you can't do it. You just can't. So it's just become so much. A lot of the tools we have to get for our clients, they're security tools, and just every discussion, it's all around the security and keeping us safe and keeping our clients safe.
For the layman who's tuning in here to this conversation, Jeff, how does one organization play that, I would say, surrounding body of protection and security for so many organizations? Because my mind went to the place of saying, if they get past our security, then we're opening them up to hundreds of our partners. How does that work?
So there's a couple things. One is one of the. This will sound like almost like the opposite of what you're asking, but having the same security tools and stack on all the clients. You can't have one client have this and one client has that. You have to have a very uniform framework that you're working from. The second thing we do is you try to separate our internal tools from the customer tools as much as possible, right? So for certain things, we will run a different set of tools for our in-house than from the customer. So if they do breach one set, they're not able to leapfrog over to the other. And then the other thing is just a lot of layers, right? There's no one security tool. There's 5 security tools that we run. So if it gets through one layer, the other one will catch it. So it's just a very much a layered approach that it used to be back in the day. Throw some antivirus software on something, that was all you had to worry about, but that's not the case anymore.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting to me.
So part of what this transition has been, I'm sure, supporting your clients with AI and how you guys are thinking about AI. What's your stance on artificial intelligence, um, especially some of the generative stuff that's coming out? How are you guys looking at these new tools to play with?
I think it's absolutely going to be a game changer. I think I'm probably, I don't want to call it a naysayer. I think it's a little bit hyped up here at the moment. I think the hype's getting a little ahead of the reality. There's just certain things. It's great at certain things, right? I mean, ChatGPT, it is amazing at helping you write. It's amazing at helping you get answers. But as far as, get to the point where it's replacing people, probably not quite there. But I think any company that's not paying a pretty decent attention to it and figuring out how it's going to fit into their future roadmap is going to get left behind, no question about it. I mean, these last couple of years have just been amazing from what it can do, and I think we're going to see that get even more here in the next couple of years. So, absolutely something to keep an eye on. Just maybe not quite there yet.
Is that the kind of advice you give to your partners? Because I'm guessing you're kind of like the tier one engagement layer to say, like, hey, if we're going to explore this stuff, let's hit up Jeff and the team to see if this is something that's even feasible. So, what do you think the commonalities of the questions people are asking right now? Is this safe technology? What can it really do for us? Or how are you handling those conversations?
Yeah, 100%. So, we're a very big Microsoft shop. So, one of the things we've been asked over the last year is, hey, we want to get Microsoft Copilot and we want to use it. So one of the things about Microsoft Copilot that a lot of people don't know, now there's two versions of Copilot. There's one that's just the internet one that people can search on, but then there's one that's integrated in with Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365, and it's in your office. If you don't have your security set up right, Copilot will go find things that you don't want people seeing. Like you could say, hey, tell me the average salary of everybody that works here. And if it has access to the files, it'll go find them. So we've been very cautious with this. And the customers that have wanted it, we've had them sign a release that says, okay, we're not responsible for this because you got to spend a lot of time getting the security set up right and making sure that the permissions that the person running it has, the person may not find the files, but the AI will. So we've been very, very cautious with that with our clients. And again, because it came out so fast and it was so much in the news, everybody wanted access to this thing. We were like, all right, let's try to slow down a little bit. We like to be cutting edge. We do not like to be bleeding edge. So we tend to probably move a little bit slower than maybe some of our clients would like. But again, that security is always top of mind.
November 2022, right? ChatGPT releases. Everybody's going crazy. The media, CNN, everybody's talking about it. What are some of the internal conversations you guys are having? Like, oh shit, here comes something down the pipe, or like, what are we going to have to be prepared for? What was that like?
Yeah, I think it's that kind of thing. We probably didn't pay a lot of attention to it just because, there's so much in the news and you never know what's, but then somebody in the company played around with it one day and, said, whoa, holy cow, this is something to pay attention to. So then all of a sudden you start using it and it gets spreads a little bit and 3 or 4 people start using it. And then it gets to be, okay, now, one of the big things, especially with ChatGPT and all those LLMs is learning how to use them, right? You can just slap some stuff in there, but if you learn how to use it and how to ask it the right questions, you get a lot better output out from it. So it was just, let everybody kind of explore it a little bit, play around a little bit, and then, throw some internal meetings together to talk about it and say, okay, how can we use this in our business and how's it going to help our clients?
Have you seen kind of a transformative form of technology like this in your lifetime? When you were talking about your example, how to use it, I naturally went to the place of thinking about a pen, right? I can write essays with a pen. I can be an artist with a pen. I can also write billion-dollar checks with a pen, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, there's always in the IT space. There's always, you went from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95 to Windows, and those were always iteratively better than the last one. But even you think about some of the voice technology, Siri and that kind of thing. I mean, that's been pretty transformative in the Alexa devices. But even dictation. For how long has dictation been out where you can dictate instead of typing? And I don't know anybody that on a computer that doesn't. I'll do it on my phone a lot because I can type 60 words a minute. I can't type 60 words a minute on my phone. Um, but none of those I don't think have taken off like I think we're seeing this one take off. And again, I think it's very much in its infancy. So I think as it just keeps, you get that momentum going, and I think it's just going to kind of exponentially grow here in the next couple of years. So I don't know that we've seen anything like maybe email, like
Mm.
um, email probably I would say is probably the closest thing to it when you stopped faxing and started emailing. Just I mean that was just a communication explosion back in the day. So
Wow.
and the internet, I guess the internet's really the other big one, right? I mean that one's the obvious one.
That was fair.
Been around long enough now, you kind of forget that it didn't used to be there.
Yeah. Jeff, as you're speaking, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes, which is, you take 30 linear steps, you're at 30. But if you take 30 exponential steps, you're at a billion. And a lot of people feel like AI is on this exponential path, and we're kind of still at this bottom before we hit this huge curve. I'm curious how you're looking at, because you talked a little bit about the state of technology today, and it's not quite where you want it to be. But if you look back to 2022, to Keenan's point, the transformation of the technology has made leaps and bounds in only a few short years. When we were comparing to 3.5, one of the first early models, to 3.0 preview that was just demonstrated a couple weeks ago by Sam Altman, where it's demonstrating PhD level math, PhD level, could pass the bar exam, PhD level English. It's like it's beating humans now. And so it's like, what's this going to look like when we extrapolate it another 3, 5, 10 years? Do you see a world where AI is more replacing humans in some of the roles that we thought we wouldn't be replaced in our lifetime, or is this still kind of like a Jetsons theory where maybe it'll never happen?
No, I think it's definitely going to get there. I mean, even if you just pick the thing it does really well now, which is writing, right? If I was a copywriter, I would be scared to death. Um, it's just, and especially again, I think if you learn how to use, like if you just say, hey, write me some copy on something, it's okay, right? But for example, I did something the other day. One of the things you can do is ChatGPT. So I've been using it for a year or whatever, and I went in and said, tell me everything you know about me as a person that you've learned about me since I've been interacting with you. And it came back with just some spot on. It said, I know you just celebrated your company's 30th anniversary and you had a great party for your people. And it pulled some stuff, I think, from the internet, and it just built this incredible picture of me.
Hmm.
So it's just some really, and again, I think for the people that know how to interact with, and for somebody that can provide here's 50 years of writing and how we've written documents at a company. Now produce something that's in that style and it's going to nail it and it's going to do a very good job. So I think that's the obvious one, but I think again, like you said, as this exponentially grows upon itself, it's going to find it's going to displace all kinds of jobs. It's just probably a question of when and to what level, right?
All right. When you put your futurist hat on, do you see this? One of the conversations we have with leaders a lot is this idea that maybe it could replace a lot of jobs in the future. The sizes of teams are going to collapse because it's going to be so augmented with AI. Do you see these jobs being displaced? Like, hey, humans are going to be doing different tasks, different jobs, new opportunities, or do you feel like there's going to be this kind of extinction event where a lot of people are just going to lose out on opportunities because they're completely replaced?
Yeah, I don't know because obviously there's the standard answer for that is well you just need a lot more programmers to work in, but that's not you don't just jump over there from being a copywriter.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I tend to not. I think very probably more short term than long term. So I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that. Um, but yeah, it's a little scary when you think about it. If there's not something for people to, I mean, people are made to work, right? You can't have a life where you just sit around and I don't, play video games and watch TikTok all day, right? That's not good for the human brain. So I worry a little bit about that. Like, what is going to happen here if people do start getting displaced and we haven't figured out a way for them to go be productive in society? That's a little. If you play that all the way out, it gets pretty scary where you get to this utopian like just sitting around, and that's not good.
We are meant to work. Aren't we, Jeff? We see a lot of people who are trying to always eliminate work off their plate. They want the easy way, the quickest shortcut, if you will, to get to my end result. But I think over your 30 years of experience in, business, you've learned that the journey, maybe I'm speaking for you, is kind of where the fulfillment at is in the process.
For me personally, for sure, but I think it's again in that human experience. It's one of the things we say. So we had three founding partners, and all three of us are still here every day, in the trenches doing our thing. And you see this plenty of people who they retire and they don't know what they're going to do with themselves, and they either kind of wither away and die, or they get bored and they end up coming back into the workforce. So yeah, I think there is, there's a few people here and there that they just love to golf and they can golf every day, right? That's pretty few and far in between. So I think there's just that being able to be a productive member of society and producing and going around and doing what you enjoy. I think, it's a cliche, but I live it as it's not work if you love it. So I think that's just, I think we were put on this planet to go produce and make other people successful.
I mean, I think about helping other people be successful, right, as a form of leverage that we have a benefit of as being a leader of an organization, right? So, how have you kind of leaned into your role as the leader, as the visionary, as the I would say the vision caster to get other people who aren't your co-founding team members, right, excited about the work that you guys are doing so they can still be in this game 25, 30 years later like you guys are?
Yeah, I mean that's a constant struggle. It's hard to get people excited sometimes. So we do a lot of things around that. We have all our team members are in a daily huddle with their team every day, right? Just 10 minutes, talk about what's going on if you're stuck anywhere. I send out a weekly email to the entire team once a week, just sort of saying, hey, here's some things that are going on, or give them some business lessons. And then at least once a quarter, we get the whole team together for just a all hands meeting where I, kind of talk for a couple hours. Here's how we did last quarter. Here's what's coming up this quarter. So I think it's just that constantly staying in front of people, trying to keep them in the loop on what's going on, why this is a great place to work. It's funny you said, and I said it, and then you said it too. But like our core purpose here at the company is helping people succeed, and that means our customers, our vendors, and our team members, right? But it's always just constantly keeping that message in front of people, because it's easy to get caught up in your day-to-day job and forget what we're here. We're here to try to help somebody get over their technology problem so they can go do their job and they can go home and see their family on time, right? It plays out through that whole life cycle, I think.
How do you believe you've changed during this journey, Jeff? I see someone who's had to have transformed so much over the course of 30 years. Who you started as is probably a very different character than who you had to become to lead this company and survive for 30 years. Most businesses go out of business in the first 95%, or something like that goes out of business in the first 5 years. How do you think you've transformed from a mindset perspective?
Yeah. Man, when we started doing this, we didn't know what we were doing. And I happened to be fortunate enough to work for a few people that were really good leaders. So I learned quite a bit from them. But then you just read a lot of books and listen to a lot of podcasts and listen to some Audible books. And it was always that learning how to be a better leader. And I've changed a lot. So, I think we talked a little bit on the pre-call. So I have a special needs daughter who has taught me a lot about patience. I've not always been the most patient person, and I'm still not. And that empathy, right? I used to be not as empathetic as I am now, and I'm still got a long way to go. But just, understanding that, hey, everybody's not created the same. And because I think something should be able to get done in 10 minutes doesn't mean someone else is going to be able to do it in 10 minutes. And just because I like to talk fast and give quick answers doesn't mean the person I'm teaching is that way. So learning to communicate as others would like to be communicated to has made a tremendous impact on being able to build a team and be able to rally people around a purpose. I think it's all of that. Just learning that it's not all about you and it's about the other people. That's taken me 30 years to get there, and there's still days when I goof it up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was hearing a CEO the other day talk about this, and she was mentioning that you have to be incredibly good at code switching. You have to show up as the person that is needed in the moment to deal with that situation, with that team member, and empathize to find out where they're at in that moment. And then the next person is a completely different equation for that. Doesn't that seem a little bit stressful, right? That's a tough bar to be able to meet every single day, especially as a leader, with all the things you guys are doing.
Yeah, and I think some of it helps with the fact that just leadership styles have changed over the years, right? 30 years ago, it was command and control. Just tell people what to do, get them to go do their thing. And then over the years, as it's gotten to be more, asking questions and then getting people to come up with their own answers and saying, hey, bring me a solution, bring me an idea, and I'll give you some input on it. And then, but letting people come to their own answers, I think that's taken a lot of stress off of that level. Like you don't have to have all the answers, right? I think that's been a big part of it, and that's a big learning curve, right? For people that came out of that world where it was always just you got to know everything, you got to give people the answers. Again, it takes time to learn that and relearn how to do it the other way. And I think the other thing that we are always preaching here that is really difficult for people, you got to be willing to fail, right? We always tell people, listen, go screw something up, right? You're going to mess it up. Don't mess up the same thing 3 times in a row, but don't be afraid to break something. But man, people struggle with that. Again, it goes back to one of our core values is ownership. We say, listen, if you mess something up, just raise your hand and say, I goofed that up. But people are taught from like a very young age to like, no, never tell your boss you don't know, or never tell your boss you goofed something up. And it's really a struggle to get people to overcome that. It's like hardwired in there from when you're little, and people just and then they come out of a bad organization where that wasn't the case, right? This was a while back. We had a guy driving a company truck, and he got in an accident, and he was afraid to death we were going to fire him. It's like, it was an accident, but but he's worked at places where they would have fired him for that. So it's a big, giant learning curve, I think, and it's not stressful for me because that's part of why I still enjoy doing what I'm doing. Because again, it's another part of learning, right? Learning how to work with different personalities and be able to work around different people's shortcomings. It's kind of the challenge for me, I think.
I heard a really interesting podcast the other day. I follow a really cool podcast. You might have heard of this, Jeff and Dante. I'm sure we've talked about this. It's called My First Million, with
Oh yeah,
two younger guys, like 34, 36 years old. And they were interviewing the CEO of a company the other day called 37 Signals. They produce
oh sure,
Basecamp, right?
yeah.
And we might have talked about this.
Jason
Freed. Yeah,
Fried, yeah.
exactly. And I was talking about, this is our conversation. We were talking about, he as a founder said, your job as a founder of the organization is to inject risk. Because like you said, everybody else who's an employee often is not the person who is encouraged to take risk. So your job is to push people a little bit so they can be on the edge, not the bleeding edge, right, of taking that risk. How do you kind of feel like you've been able to inject risk into your organization by trying to push people to do things differently?
That's I would have never considered it pushing the risk out. I like the way that sounds though. We've probably not been the best at this over the years. This is probably something we've really picked up more in the last 5 years. We've had a great leadership team for 10 plus years, and we've taken a lot on at that level, and we've done a generally poor job of getting things pushed out. Recently, we've started to build up a little bit of a middle management layer, which has been fun, and watching them take things and go figure it out themselves, similar to what we did 20 years ago. But it's something you have to learn how to do, and I think it's something you have to consciously do because, again, typically founders or leaders are pretty type A, they're pretty high driven, and they want to just do everything themselves. So I think it's one of those challenges you got to learn to be able to push things out. And in our case, because we had a decent sized leadership team with some good talent, we just always kept it there. Yeah. So that's, again, something that's been new for us, and it's really almost kind of injected a new energy into the company to get this next layer of people that are solving the problems that we used to solve. And now you just sit in a meeting and just watch them go. And then, when they're done, they're like, how's it sound? You go, sounds great. Go get it done. And it's, and again, I think everyone likes that, right? People like their challenge. People like to have a risk. It's just, it's harder to do when you're inside a company. So I love the concept of pushing risk out.
Yeah, but that also means that you have to trust, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because as the founder, right, as a part of that executive leadership team, you think everything needs to be done by you, like we talk about. I read this really good book by a guy named Dan Martell, who's also in the IT and SaaS space. And he said, Pareto's principle is 80-20. 20% of the work you do brings 80% of the results. Let's reverse that. When you're talking about creating leverage and building teams, you as the leader have to be okay with your team member doing the job 80% as well as you would have.
Yeah.
You've got an extra 20% of capacity now, and that 80 plus 20 is 100% fucking awesome. But that means you have to trust that team to go execute on that vision, which is really tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, there's the other piece of that is they're not always going to do it the way you would do it, right? You got to get very much, one of the shifts we've made here in the last year or so is like stop talking about output and start talking about outcomes. And I think that's a big thing. Listen, here's the outcome I'm looking for. You go figure out how to get it done. Um, so I think that's been, um, a transformative piece. Um, so yeah, I'm mulling over what you said because I think there is that absolute. Um, it's just all about letting people get involved and let them do their thing, and there's absolute trust, right? And then there's a trust but verify, right? Because the other thing we've noticed over the years is we'll have a process that we think, oh yeah, we put that in place 3 years ago, it's working great, and then you go double check on it, and it turns out we haven't even done it at all for the last year. So I think that's where the leaders and managers need to get involved. Again, less doing and more, we call it overwatch, just overwatching what's going on and verifying. And I think that's, again, that mind shift that you have to be able to transition yourself as a leader or a manager to be able to move upstream a little bit and take on some different skill set.
I imagine trust like that comes from the top down. So it has to come from the co-founders. So just Jeff, giving a nod to your co-founders, what's the dynamic look like? How do you guys get along so well over, a 30-year span? I haven't even had friends for 30 years yet. So
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Well, it helps to be old. First of all, you got to be old. That's a key. I think and we always say that, like people like, hey, the three founders are still here. We haven't killed each other yet.
Yeah.
Because that is very rare, right? I mean, and it's actually one of the things that's really helped us succeed because I know a lot of people that are in a similar situation as us, where it's one founder and they can't even take a week off, right? Because there's nobody there to pick up the pace. So that's something that we've always been able to do, is like, because there was three of us. The biggest thing has been we have three very different personalities, right? I am, somebody always asks, well, how did you decide who was going to be the CEO? And I was like, well, I don't know. It just sort of fell to me because I was kind of more the driver of the group, right? One of my co-founders, Pat, is much more passive, right? He's not very confrontational. So we've gotten into very few scrapes over the years because we just kind of all know our place. And when it's a really big decision, we just talk it out and generally come to a consensus. It took us a lot of years, probably 20 of those 30, to get to the part where my partners were comfortable with, like, hey, there's going to be some times when I'm going to have to make a decision that you're maybe not going to agree with, and you got to get comfortable with that. And that wasn't always the case. That, again, takes some time. And even though we knew each other for probably 10 years before we started the company, we had to build up some trust as well to be able to trust that, yeah, Jeff kind of does know what he's doing, and getting the rope to be able to go do that without having to fight over every decision. So that was part of the journey as well.
Have you ever heard of the author named Dan Sullivan?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so he has a book called The Gap and the Gain.
Yep, I just finished it about a month ago.
Beautiful. Okay, so I like to use the example of, right, when we find ourselves in the gap, it's because we're thinking that we are in the gap between where we are now and the end of our goal, right? That finish line, that horizon that he references. So recognizing that it's easy for a highly motivated, highly active founder like yourself to consistently want more. Here's my question. I had a mentor one time ask me a simple question that kind of changed my perspective. He said, Keenan, how big is small enough?
Oh.
So when you think about building your business, like, how big does small enough have to be? Because you don't have to be the next Amazon, right? You don't have to be the next $100 million, $200 million organization, right? You can be smaller, but that can be big enough for you. So how do you kind of think about that paradigm?
Yeah, we've never really had big, because, we're in a service industry. You can only grow a service business so fast without just pulling your hair out, right? So we've always had generally tried to do more slow, planned out growth, right? We don't want to grow 30% a year because it's just chaos. So I think at some level we've inherently had that mentality, either because it was just too hard and we just settled into that, or it was just we knew it was going to be a problem. We never really we never talked about building a $500 million company. It was just, hey, we're going to do our thing. We're going to execute every year, and we're going to grow. We've always wanted to grow. It's not that we're anti-growth, but it's controlled growth and not just that chaos where you're hiring 100 people in a month. So I think that was just kind of built into our DNA for whatever reason. So, and even now, if somebody said, hey, you could wave a magic wand, and would I be up for if somebody came to me and said, hey, well, we could turn you into a company 5 times the size, and you could have the challenge of running it, I'd be up for it because it sounds like fun. But that process of getting there is it's a lot of time, especially after doing it for 30 years. We've settled in a good spot. I don't need that kind of chaos in my life at this point.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, me and Dante, right, are in our mid 30s now. And of course, we are ambitious and we want to accomplish a lot of things. But also, we recognize that we started these businesses to create freedom for ourselves,
Right.
right? We don't want golden handcuffs that keeps us showing up every day and doing the things that we don't enjoy. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do we find, or what advice would you kind of give to the audience for that younger founder who has huge goals, but might come across those early wins that give them that sense of peace? Would you suggest that they continue to chase, or maybe just kind of slow roll it like you guys did?
Yeah. I think there's a balance in there somewhere because there's a lot of people out there, and probably just about a lot of younger people think, oh, you start the business, you do it for 5 or 10 years, and then it's on easy street. Yeah, that's a myth. That doesn't happen, right? You get a business going in 10 years and then go take a trip for 3 months and you come back and it's chaos, right? Um, Other than in rare cases where maybe you have a really phenomenal team, but generally if you're not there doing your thing, the wheels are going to come off. And I think there's a longevity factor that I'm not sure the younger generation is up for all the time, right?
Mm.
Um, so I think you got to be willing to put in the time, put in the effort, and it's not going to be a 5 or 10 year journey. You're not going to just, and part of it is people say, oh, Amazon and Tesla and all these. You get those big media stories that sound like, oh yeah, you just go do this thing and grow it and you become a billionaire. Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So, and it goes back to grit, right? You got to have the grit. In those early days for a new company, you got to show up every single day, and someone's going to be, you may work 12, 13-hour days. You're not going to work the, I can't think, Tim Ferriss with the 4 hour.
4 hour work week.
I can't,
Yeah.
I don't even know what the book's about, but I can't stand the title because I think people read it and think, oh yeah, it's like, no, that's not how the world works. So, sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
Is Tim a fan of the podcast?
Tim is actually going to be on next week. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice.
I'm just joking. Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, I'd love to transition a little bit into how you conceptualize branding and media for your company, especially doing it for such a long time. And what I mean by that, especially in the service industry, the brand is your ability to deliver and deliver on your promise that you made to your client. So how do you kind of think about brand, especially doing it for such a long time? What does that mean to you?
It's funny. This comes up every now and then in our marketing, and our sales director comes in. We need to do more branding. It's like, hey, we're not McDonald's, but being in business 30 years, we do at some point the brand. There is a brand there behind us, right? People recognize the name, and people do know us just because we've been around for a while, and we do have some well-known clients. So we don't spend a lot of time talking about the brand. We do spend a lot of time talking about the marketing and just delivering of the service, right? We really, in general, want the service to speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that is there's such an intangible piece to trying to explain service to people, right? Oh, we have great service. Well, everybody says that. So we're always trying to find tangible, a metric or something that we can tie to it that we can show some results behind what we do. And I think if that translates to some aspect of the brand, that's, I think where we end up. But yeah, the branding is a little funny, I think, for us, because I just don't think of branding in smaller companies as going together at some extent.
There's some tailwinds behind us, especially as we complete 2024. January of 25 is when we're recording this. One of the big topics that we hear a lot about today is founder-led marketing. That puts a lot of, I would say, stress on the founder to say, hey, listen, I spent the last 30 years building the systems, building the team, building how we go to market and how we position ourselves. Now you guys want me to do things like even hopping on this podcast?
Yeah.
How do you kind of think about that new expectation for media, visibility, telling your story as kind of one of the co-founders of the business?
I think I'm doing it obviously right now. I'm here. I'm in the process. I started, dabbled a little bit in some LinkedIn posts last year, took some classes, started out January with, I've posted every day so far, and I plan to post every day for the year. But yeah, it's a whole different, especially for, generally you either get it's probably the founder is either in a tech company is either he was a tech
Hmm.
or he was a sales guy, right? There's not a lot of generally marketing people that end up running a company. So it's just so much of a learning curve, and it's just marketing is so hard, right? It's like what worked today doesn't work tomorrow, and it's always a constant battle. So I think in one aspect, it's almost a requirement these days because it's so hard and it is so integral to success. It's one of those things that I think the founder needs to have his hand on. And that's a matter of fact, one of the changes we made this year was we took some of the operational pieces of the company that were under me and we moved those to my one of my co-founders, who's the COO. So that now I have three focuses: finances, marketing, and then just the top level of the company. Um, because you need some more bandwidth to be able to do it because it's such a challenge. So
Hmm.
back in the day, 15 years ago, you had that you saw more founder-led sales, right? And I do think there's still some value into having a founder out selling the thing, but the marketing needs that same kind of effort these days, I think. So it's a
Yeah.
good point.
So, Jeff, looking to the future, what keeps you excited about being in the IT space with all the challenges? Such a long journey. Still working with your co-founders. You guys haven't strangled each other yet, or at least you guys don't talk about it publicly. What do you feel? What do you feel about the future is really exciting, compelling?
It's the constant change for me. Even just on the micro of every day is different. But I mean, again, even thinking about the marketing, right? Trying to overcome the challenge of getting marketing to work. Um, AI on the horizon. How are we going to adapt that into the business? So I think it's just that always something new. There's always something different to talk about. It's just that constant change, constant challenge that it's not the same old, same old. That's what gets me out of bed. Um, and then, building a successful team. We really do want our people here to be successful. One of the things we tell people is like, listen, we're going to have a one-on-one with you every month. And if part of your dream is to not be working here in 5 years, that's okay. Let's talk about how to get you to that spot because it is really about we want people to succeed. So it's figuring out how to build great lives for our team is another thing that I get excited about. And it's just all of that wrapped up into one. That I love it. It's just great.
Yeah, I get really excited about what the future of business looks like. And I'll kind of be a little bit vulnerable here, but it's like you spend years as a founder trying to just get to the point where it's like everything is stable, right? And we have predictability in the business. But then you think about what does this business mean for the employees who work here? And why can't they look at this as a vehicle to help them get to where they want to go? And hearing you just say how helping our employees live lives that they want to live, right? That in itself is just so beautiful. And I think more founders should be thinking about how do we use the vehicle of the business that we built to put people in position so they can be happy, healthy, and be a part of this team for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, a couple things we're proud of. So we've last 3 years in a row, we've been awarded best places to work in Illinois, which has been phenomenal. But our average tenure of our over our whole staff is 7 years, which is
Nice.
unheardedly high in the IT industry, right? People usually stay 1 or 2 years. So I think again, part of that is we've made a very conscious effort over the years to try to build a place where people can come, have fun, work hard, and succeed. And again, it's a concerted effort that doesn't happen by accident. So yeah, I think it's all part of the top level job of a founder and company executives to try to build that for people.
So, Jeff, one of the things we have as a tradition here on the podcast is we have our previous guest ask you a blind question. So, the
Uh-oh.
question that came from our previous guest was if you could go back to the 18-year-old version of yourself and you had 5 minutes of time to give them advice to do one thing differently, what would that thing be and what advice would you give them?
Oh man. Uh, Study more in college? No. um, Probably learn to be more. We talked about it already. Learn to be more patient. Learn how to be empathetic. Learn how to. I come from a very not argumentative family, but like we don't mind mixing it up, right? We'll throw a controversial topic out there and we'll talk about it for 5 minutes and nobody gets mad. Most of the world doesn't work that way. Um,
Yeah.
and my wife being one of them. So I think learning that earlier on and being able to master that, which I still haven't done, would be some really great advice I could have given to my 18-year-old self.
Well, beautiful, man. Well, Jeff, got to say, man, from the bottom of our hearts, everybody who's tuning in, watching, and listening, man, this has been an absolute blast. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show with me and Dante.
I'm glad to do it. It was awesome. You guys do a great job of just bouncing off each other. It was really fun. I enjoyed all the questions and hope everybody got something out of it.
All right, guys. Well, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again for tuning in. Once again, Jeff, thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate it. See you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.